Praise be to Jesus Christ and welcome to Catholic Forum. I'm your host, Deacon Jim Thorndale. I want to welcome all those who are joining us, taking the time out of their busy schedule to either be viewing us or hearing what's going on here in a very important part of our lives, really our understanding of who we are as Catholics. You know, it's always our privilege to enter into wherever you're at and to really, all of us can journey together on what we know to be our Catholic life, what it means to really live in the love of the Lord Jesus. You know, and we're in this Advent season we're in right now. I think what could be more important really than an understanding of what it is to live as family, not only as a family in the church and community, but what it means for the nuclear family in our world today, what it means for a family to be the fabric of society, really the domestic church that we know. And so what could be more important for us to talk about than the value of living as family in this world? And who better to help me out today than I have some guests here who have recently been at the World Meeting of the Families, and I'd like to introduce them to you. I have Terry Marshall. Terry, it's nice to have you here. And you are the campus minister at Aquinas College, correct?
I am.
And I have Mark and Cammie Mann. Thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
Mark, you are the I know you're the director, diocesan director of the youth and family at the diocese there. And I know you are also you're a spiritual director, and you are also a blogger and a writer.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
So you all had the opportunity to be at this meeting together, correct?
We did.
Let's get into the understanding of what was the understanding that came out of it, and what was the purpose of this meeting. So who wants to start and really give us a kind of synopsis of what it meant?
Sure, I can do that.
Thank you, Mark.
Yes.
It was really a pinnacle event of a year of preparation. Once we knew that Philadelphia would be hosting the next World Meeting of Families, that actually had been announced 3 years prior at the end of the last one that had been held in Milan. And but really the very intensive and intentional time of preparation started about a year prior with catechesis and the idea of building towards a sense of solidarity so that when we came together, close to 20,000 people during that week from, I think we said 170 countries, all represented, and it was as families coming together. So it was really a moment of celebration, but it was also a moment of education, and it was a moment of praise for what God is doing in our lives.
When all these different people from all these different countries were coming together, did you have something you all prepared prior to that you really kind of focused on before you came together, something to discuss or some intention you were looking at particularly? I think there's something mentioned, a book or something you would...
Well, parishes could or dioceses could invite people to participate, in a group study with this material. It's great material. It's at the Michigan Church Supply still. I ordered some more. It's called Love is Our Mission. It was a preparatory catechesis. I had not seen it until I was on the scene. And then I told Mark later, this is amazing. Where can I get more of these?
It was a great read.
It's a great catechesis for how the Catholic Church views family as the fundamental building block of society. An evangelical group of people who are who really share the love of the Lord in their world and in their context at work and at school, etc.
And Cammie, how did you decide that you wanted to go to this along with Mark? Just tag along, or is it something?
Well, yes and no. I do have Mark and I as family. It was a natural fit for us to go. And so that was part of it. And the other part of it is still, I did some blogging from the World Meeting of Families on behalf of the Diocese of Grand Rapids.
Wonderful.
So, as Terry was talking about the preparatory catechesis, Faith Magazine had done a 10-month series. If people were looking to get their hands on the catechesis, Mark had written a column on taking each one of those. Yes. So just a great way. So there was some of that background that had been happening in that preparation for the year. So the opportunity to go, first and foremost, as Mark's wife, was a great privilege. And then to go and to actually write and blog and to witness. I'm always one that's up for pilgrimage anywhere, and so to be able to make the pilgrimage there and to treat it as prayer was a gift as well.
And when you look at it as a pilgrimage too, it really makes it something really special when you're entering into that too, because you really know that you're entering into something much greater than yourself in that pilgrimage. When you first got there, let's kind of go through this a little bit. I'm sure there was overwhelming the amount of people there in Philadelphia.
It was overwhelming, but they were beautiful.
Yeah.
They were so receptive and kind. Everybody was, well, Mark had prepared the diocese well, I think, reminding us we're on pilgrimage, there are going to be long lines, you're going to be in line with all kinds of people. And so that's what I expected, and I think Mark did a great preparation. But evidently other people had done really good preparations from wherever they had come, because we would be in long lines with people and talking with them if we could share a language. And even the people of Philadelphia, if we pulled out a map, we were trying to find our way, they would stop what they were doing and ask if we needed any assistance. So I was always telling the residents of Philadelphia how generously I felt that we had been received.
Yes.
When you did get into some of these meetings, obviously there was a language barrier for many of the conversations, or did you end up speaking with people of your own language primarily, if you got into conversations or groups?
Everybody was together.
Okay.
They did have some workshops, I believe, in Spanish. There were a few.
Okay.
But for the most part, they were doing instantaneous translation as well, so people could listen in various languages.
Okay.
But everybody was together. You were, just a great moment was sitting in the large auditorium area where they were having mass and the keynotes, but just watching, fathers from India sitting on the floor feeding their toddlers, and an Ecuadorian dad, I remember chasing his 3-year-old down the aisle, because kids were just kids and all over. And
there was family.
You were, and to witness that, the church together like that.
Did you bring in your children?
No, ours are young adults, and so it was kind of that, what does family mean for those of us who don't necessarily have children at home anymore, and so to be able to see that presence at a World Meeting of Families was very powerful too.
That's a good concept too, about that no longer. I have no children left at home too, so but we're still family.
Right.
That doesn't change the reality of who we are. But now the family is changing, it's metamorphosing into something much greater than what I anticipated, and you see that. How about you, Terry? Did you alone, or did
I went with the 14 people, Mark and Kimmy from the Diocese of Grand Rapids. So I went as a representative of Aquinas College, and then on the weekend 8 students joined us. So another 150 pilgrims joined us from the Diocese of Grand Rapids, and 8 of those were Aquinas College students.
Wonderful.
So I was able to spend time with them on Sunday.
Okay. Well, in a pilgrimage, and I say this, I went on that pilgrimage, I call it, when I saw the canonization of the popes in Rome. But on a pilgrimage, you always come back with something. I mean, you glean a lot out of these, you do. Looking back on it now, just give us some of the highlights. What was the most important aspect for you, each one of you? What did you really come out of this with as an important part of this?
For me, it was the international gathering.
Okay.
Like I said, you heard languages from every continent in the world, and you saw people from Asia in their very traditional formal dress, and Africa and its beautiful colors, and so for me it was the echoing of Pentecost through the ages. It was a Pentecost event. Right. That this church had come together like this, and we can be, at least for myself, I can be myopic as to what the church looks like, and I think it looks like my church.
That's right.
And so to see this church, this universal gathering of God's people, and just the joy that permeated it, beyond language barriers, the looks, the smiles, the things that were shared. So for me, it was just a wonderful perspective of the church yet to come and the church as it is. Yeah. So
could I safely say this was really just an affirmation of family through this whole thing, really a strong affirmation of what it means to live a Catholic life, I would say a Christian life, really as a family, as a unit, and the very core of the nucleus of who we are. That's such an important process in that. Mark, if I had said something really what you take away from that, what would it be?
Well, what immediately struck me from what you were saying was not just the affirmation of a Catholic view of family, but it was the living affirmation.
Yeah.
We listened to speakers, Cardinal Sarah from Africa, Bishop Barron from here in the U.S., Cardinal Tagle of Manila in the Philippines. And
they were all speaking in their native tongues, I assume, and you were getting...
No, they were all speaking in English for the major keynotes. There was one keynote that was done in Spanish, and instantaneous translation was provided for that as well. But for all the words, it was seeing this living affirmation of family that was celebrated through not just the talks, but through the conversations that you could have with people, waiting in the long lines. It was in the celebration that happened. It was the prayer together, especially in the when we got to the weekend to be able to celebrate with the Pope being there.
Did Pope celebrate the Mass? Did you?
He did.
He did.
The closing Mass.
That had to be powerful.
It was.
Yeah.
Having our Holy Father celebrating the Mass. Wow.
In Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia, and that was certainly a highlight. The Festival of Families, the night before, was that reflection too of just like what you were saying, Cammie, about the diversity that is part of our universal church.
And that Festival of Families, in the evening, there were families from around the globe that they had prepared to talk to the Pope about what it was like to be family and to be a Christian family in their own country. And so those were really beautiful stories. We had, people from, oh my gosh, we had, there were people from the Middle East, there were people from the Ukraine maybe.
I think every continent.
Every continent was represented,
Yes.
and he wanted to listen. It was interesting. The first folks they had wanted them to memorize, but that didn't really work out with that first couple. So after that, they asked them to use their script but it was really kind of beautiful. This one man who had memorized, he was very nervous, and his fiance was just looking at him like, "You can do this," And the Pope, he was listening to them so intently, and then he responded to them.
He did.
He took
and
notes.
Off the cuff.
And off the cuff. He was taking notes and he responded to them.
Oh, that's one of the beautiful things about Pope Francis too. He's very impromptu. He can speak.
And he really wanted to connect. You could tell that. So for me, after that Festival of Families, where there were dances from all countries at 25 different stages. So there were musical presentations and dance, all kind of art. So even the art was celebrated, how we express our love of the family and how we express our love of God. Well, at the closing of the Festival of Families, when I was leaving, going back to get onto the Amtrak, Andre Bocelli was singing the Lord's Prayer.
Oh,
we were in Philadelphia with 1 million people.
Yeah.
Wait, how many million people?
Yeah.
Right.
On the Festival of Families?
I think it was 2 million.
2 million.
By that
2 million
weekend.
people
2 million,
walking,
yes.
making our way back to Amtrak, and the Lord's Prayer is being sung throughout the city.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
It was. It was.
It's really pretty profound when you think about that.
It's spectacular.
It's hard to describe. I know they were live streaming, and so you could watch it if you had your computer, and maybe you had a really nice stereo system, and even that doesn't even capture the 40 jumbotrons that lined this 2-mile stretch of the Benjamin Franklin Parkway, and every one of them had this full set of speakers like you're at a huge concert, and the city was just filled with that prayer.
With prayer.
It was.
Yeah.
That's great. Going back to I know when you're at these different functions going on, were there any particular documents they focused on that any of the encyclicals the Pope has written, any of those that they really kind of took some of their understanding from during that time?
I don't think so.
Pope Paul's writings or...
Some of it. They definitely focused a lot of the reflections as far as the speakers.
Okay.
Who were all reflecting on the text of the Preparatory Catechesis.
Okay.
And providing their own reflections of what's our understanding of human sexuality? What's our understanding of raising children? What's our understanding of celibate life in the context of family life and parish life?
Yeah.
What's our understanding of when we come to the end of our life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And all of that was being reflected on. One of the takeaways for me was it's hard to get a sound bite, so to speak, out of any of the presentations that were offered, but one of the quotes that keeps coming back to me was from Cardinal Sarah, he's the president of the Pontifical Council for, I think, worship, if I remember. Don't quote me on that.
Okay.
You'd have to look it up.
You just did.
Okay. But his quote was, "The family is the living memory of the fidelity of God."
Amen. Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. And I think one of the areas within our Western culture today, I can't speak for all the cultures, But our Western culture, to me, has lost a sense of our elderly in our families, how quickly we can dismiss them sometimes. And I say this lovingly. Some people I know are not capable of taking care of their elderly parents, and I understand that. But for those that are, I would just like to reach out to them at this time, because they are so integral to our family, our elderly parents.
Yes.
And I had the privilege of having my father in my home for the last 7 months. I wouldn't have traded it for the world, because that was family. And that was really the care and understanding of leading my dad home to the Lord, really having that time with him.
Yes.
You know, did they address those type of issues about caring for the elderly and those who are capable?
I think, and in part,
There were breakout sessions, I have no doubt, because there were breakout sessions for families who had persons with disabilities, as well as the aging. Yeah.
And they did that with, as Terry was talking about, the families who were able to speak to the Pope. They did it across the stage cycles of family. So it wasn't, went from, the fiance, the pre-marriage, the couples doing marriage prep, all the way to the grandparents who were talking about being able to share their faith with their grandchildren. So that was there throughout, I think, where they made sure it was represented, that the family itself in all of its stages, and that was an integral part of it.
And even on the Congress of the Family, there were breakout sessions for grandparents on how to pass their faith to their children, especially in situations where the parents of the children themselves are not believers, but the grandparents still are. And so what is a grandparent's role in passing on their faith to their grandchildren?
You've done something very important, Terry, because I know that there are many grandparents, maybe they discuss this, who have a little bit of trepidation about speaking to the grandkids because the parents aren't talking about it. And so they feel they're going to interfere, and they fear they're going to overstep their boundaries. Was that discussed?
I'm sure I did not go to those breakout sessions. However, I did overhear grandparents talking about what they learned and what they were going to go get. And so I think they were encouraged, and probably to respect their children, but also to respect their own their mission to love and to pass on their faith.
Exactly. They said love is our mission.
That's right.
That really is.
And that is passing
love
on.
is speaking the truth not only to your children but to your grandchildren.
Yes.
So let's go back to what Mark said too about kind of looking at a Catholic perspective. After all, this is Catholic Forum. What did they say a Catholic family should look, or I should say should look like? But what is the reflection of a Catholic family in our understanding, in our dialogue? How would you say that?
In principle, it's as St. John Paul II articulated in the Apostolic Exhortation on the Family back in 1980. After the first synod that we had on the family. This one we just had is not the first time we've talked about family in the world. And St. John Paul II articulated the family is a community of life and love. A communion of life and love. And that family life, even in all the ordinary coming and going and changing diapers and taking care of parents and for all across the spectrum, is holy and sacred, that family life is sacred.
And we're called to lead our children to holiness.
Exactly. Yep. And it's, exactly. And it's in the fabric of that family that God is at work. And it really, if anything that came out of the World Meeting of Families, it was about being intentional, about noticing, about paying attention on how God is at work in your own family. But as far as what a family then should look like or how it was reflected, I'll go back to what Cammie was saying about seeing that diversity of family from all over the world, and that you could look and see the different myriad ways that family life is reflected. Because he really calls us to families, become who you are.
That's right.
Become who you are.
That's right. And I like the word you used, intentional, and they use that because it is an intentional process. If we just leave it to chance, it'll never happen. It really has to be something we sit down and say, the Lord has graced me with these beautiful children, and we think we love them. He loves them a billion times more. And all he asks us to do is raise them in faithfulness and let them come to the Lord. Terry, what's your experience of how you see the family in all this?
Well, the thing that keeps coming back to me was Bishop Togla's, and he talked on the section in the Love is Our Mission pre-catechesis on the home as the family as the home for the wounded heart. Okay. And so he really addressed that we do experience brokenness and wounds, but the Lord Jesus intends to heal us. And Bishop Tagle, as a bishop, he was like, no, I'm not going to lose anybody the Lord gives me. I mean, that's kind of how he finished. It was so passionate that I'm not going to lose anybody if I have anything to do about it. And so he was really encouraging families to have that same kind of protectiveness about the people they love, that they're not going to lose anybody that the Lord has given them.
You know, Terry, you just touched on something too that probably is very integral again to a lot of families, because it's a heartbreak for many of our parents today, of children who have maybe walked away from the faith for a while. And it really becomes a very heartache for a parent, because they're still part of the family.
They are.
And there's a brokenness in that, that they long to bring them back into that. Was there a conversation about how to minister to our children and bring them back into the Catholic family, into the family and their faith?
I'm sure it was maintaining your own fidelity and always loving them, no matter what.
Yeah. Regardless of where they're
Regardless.
at. Yeah. But continue to
love the Lord above all things.
Yeah. And that's difficult.
Yeah,
difficult.
Pastor Warren had talked about that, about your first job is to know that you're loved by God as a parent. Your first job.
You know, that's an interesting point too, because I think many times, and I've, as a spiritual director, you are and I am, many times I will ask people that I'm working with, and I will ask them, how do they see God the Father? Do they see him as a taskmaster, or do they see him as a loving Abba? And many times that's how they start to form their image of who God is, and then many times that's how they form how they become parents and what they witness in that too. So I mean, that's a powerful role of really understanding God the Father, and really, we have to see ourselves, you and I, Mark, have to see ourselves as this benevolent dictator sometimes to our children, where we have to lead them in love, but in truth. And I'm sure many of the fathers, regardless of the continent they live on, all have that same appreciation for Abba, God the Father. And that had to be a great conversation during some time in that area too, of really seeing God who is, and the Father that loves us. So as you went through this time, I'm sure you were recollecting your own family life in many of those instances, and thinking about your own family life. Can you kind of reflect a little bit on what you were thinking as you were going through all this with your own families?
I was looking at the young mothers, and I was reflecting on the fact that all of the myriad of times throughout the course of our children's lives that I became a new mother. So I became a new mother when my son learned to walk. I became a new mother when he turned 13. I became a new mother now that he's a young adult. And so just for me, it was just the ability to just spend that week resting in my motherhood and the newness of it and the renewal of it.
Yeah. How about your fatherhood? Were you thinking about that during the course of the time, Mark?
Oh, there were certainly times.
Yeah. If you had to, was there any experience that kind of struck you as over the top a little bit, or something that really kind of drew you into a deeper understanding of your fatherhood? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
No, it's a great question.
Yeah, but many times there are instances when you're hearing these type of things that it takes you back maybe to an instance in your own fatherhood, maybe something that went on. And I'm not saying do things better or worse, but I'm just saying that kind of highlights who we are as God the Father to our children, God the Mother to our children. How about you, Terry?
I think for me, of course, that we are free, and that we can give everything we want our children to have about our faith, and they are free to take it or not. And so, there's heartbreak, but there's fidelity. It's like, I've done what I can do. Then now my children need to do what they need to do. And I can be really impatient about that timeline. But in the interim, I need to love them. And I need to love them as a woman of faith.
So did we touch at all upon Catholic education? Was that discussed at all in the importance of Catholic education in the lives of our young children?
well, that parents are the primary catechists
right,
of their
exactly.
children.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Well, as I say as a deacon when I baptize, that's one of the things we say at the beginning is that you parents will become the first teachers of these children in the way of the faith. You know, but the conversation many times we have too is are you can continue to walk with them in their faith walk, and I would think maybe that in this world meeting of families, maybe they touched on a little bit of Catholic education and the value to it in some of these family members. Do you recall any of that?
You know, I don't recall it. And what I would wonder, because it was such a universal gathering, I don't know what Catholic education looks like throughout the world for families.
Nor do I.
You know, and so I suspect some of that was just talked about, I think, as far as something that families across the world, as a Catholic family, in education.
And many times, like I said, the best educators are parents in the house.
Right.
Yeah.
And that becomes paramount for a lot of the parents too. I see you're shaking your head, Terry.
I just think there was just so much witness. You know, when you see, that was not an easy trip. And there were families with very little children there. Like, you know,
that would be grueling.
Infants under a month old.
Yeah.
And there were families with children with severe disabilities. It was not an easy trip for people for those of us who didn't have to take young children with us.
Exactly.
So it was an incredible witness that I guess people wanted to say, we know that we're called to this and we're willing to do it, and we want to let other people know that they can do it too. That was my sense. So maybe even after the Festival of Families, going, you know, Andre Bocelli singing the Lord's Prayer and waiting in Amtrak, and the people I forget who I was with that night, maybe Seth. Seth and I had stayed late, and we were coming back. And they were locals of Philadelphia. They were originally from California, so they were Hispanic, probably more Pacific Coast, you know, Filipino, Hispanic. And they were a family there were 3 children and a mother and a father, and they had been working the Festival of Families all day, and they were going home. And they were going to come back and be there at 5 o'clock in the morning. So again, an incredible witness. They were so happy to be there and to share their story, and they had given incredibly, and they were Philadelphia citizens.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, it was amazing.
The dedication really of to those people of family life and the importance of witnessing that to others. How beautiful of a ministry is that? To really live in the presence of God like that, and to make sure that other people can see that witness by bringing their families along and seeing this beautiful understanding of being parents and leading your children to holiness. And really being a part of something much greater than themselves.
And I think the children were tired, but I think they were happy. They were all middle school into high school, and they were happy to be there, and they were very easy to talk to. They were tired, but I think that it had been a really good experience for them.
Well, let me just quickly ask you this. It had to be a great experience for all of you, and something you can share from the rest of your life when you're going through something like this. And there will be probably there'll be another meeting again, I'm sure, down the road somewhere on family.
Dublin.
In what year?
2018.
2018. So
start planning now.
Start planning. We'll let our viewers know in 2018 in Dublin they can be part of the world meeting of families.
That's
and
right.
really to put the emphasis on what it means to live a Catholic life as a family. So I want to thank you all for being here. It's been a great conversation, and I hope our viewers have really had some understanding that how important the family is to this world. And in God's plan of salvation, we are all called to be witness to that family. So I want to thank you for being here. Thank you, Kim, for being here. Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Terry, thanks for being here.
Yes.
I want to thank all of our viewers. And as always, we give praise to Jesus Christ. We thank Him for our love. We thank Him for His Son, Jesus, coming into our life. And we give Him all praise in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Deep